And she decides to build a monument to her son that would rival, it was a parish house for the church. It's called Colt Memorial House. And it is absolutely, again, if you get a chance on a tour sometime to come see these things, it is, I think it's the most, that and the State Capitol building, which is amazing, are two of my very favorite. I mean, they're right up there with the Mark Twain House. If I were trying to dazzle visitors to Hartford with the glories of this Victorian legacy, this is one of the buildings I would take you to. It's really amazing. The interior of it is amazing. And it's just, it's such a treasure. So, and this, the carving, this Bavarian sculptor named Albert Entris, German immigrant who came to Hartford in 1860, spent a year and a half, full-time, doing carving, stone carving for this building to complete the decorative scheme. She again continued to embellish the gardens and grounds. After her death, she left 100 acres to the city of Hartford as COLTpart. She commissions this memorial statue. So her last big project was commissioning this statue, the Colt Memorial statue in COLTpart, that has, you know, that sort of depicts the little boy genius as a teenager coming up with the idea, and then Sam Colt as the captain of industry, the master of Coltsville. And she leaves the mansion, her house, and endows it as a retirement home for women of clergy and other women of good character. So it is what it is. And it has been doing that job for 100 years. It is a place, if you were looking for, I mean, it's a really interesting place to live, and it's a very affordable place to live. They charge you something, it's not free, but it's scaled to your income. And so it's you know, it's always has a waiting list, and it's quite remarkable to live at Colt Armory. Probably a little less remarkable than it was 70 years ago when Hartford was a little more prosperous, but it's still a pretty neat thing. She then leaves money to the Wadsworth Athenaeum to build the Colt Memorial Wing. First wing of a municipal art museum in America, commissioned by a woman. And she fills it with all these Colt treasures. And that's why we were able to do this, because this collection is really a national treasure. And when you think of the industrial age, all the great names, there are almost none where so much stuff has been preserved, where you really have the material evidence to tell the story and the physical plants. I think this Coltsville National Park, when it finally happens, really will make a difference. And I'll say, ever since I first arrived here 35 years ago, I still harbor this little dream. I don't know why it's so hard. Hartford has $1 billion invested in cultural resources, and we don't even do 5% of the visitation of places like Newport and Charleston, South Carolina, that really don't have more. They may be a little more walkable, they may have a lot of things, but we should be blazing with this stuff. And when I think of the work that you're doing here with the Wood Library, if Hartford got a good tent pole up and was a flagship for visitation, destination, development to this region, it would affect everything around it, from Hillstead to the Wood Library to the Windsor Historical Society. I love living here because I love history and art, and we are up to our necks in it. It is so joyful, and it not to get political, but it bothers me that in my 35 years here, we've never had a high-ranking political official in the state of Connecticut that understood that and cared about it. And it really, if you were in Vermont, not to say that Connecticut hasn't, but Vermont is, you better care about tourism in Vermont, because that's all they've got. It's not all they've got, but it's a big part of what they've got. But the importance of tourism isn't just the tourists, it's the self-esteem and the self-awareness that comes from doing it right and to knowing. I mean, it's kind of like being either the belle of the ball or a wallflower. It's kind of nice to be liked. It's kind of nice that people seek you out. And we have got the stuff. We're not packaging and presenting effectively enough. And But this exhibit is a start. I think getting the national park here will absolutely help. This was the exhibit that we did. Amazing, amazing stuff. This is the national park, and again, Congressman Larson, our congressional delegation. I mean, not to belabor this, but it was frustrating because there was a point in the 90s when, and I'm not, you know, I'm an independent, this is not political, but where our Republican governors didn't cozy up to this because they thought that the Democratic reps in Congress, that it was, you know, and I hate it when this partisan stuff gets in the way of teamwork, because this is not political, this is just making our world a better place. I actually have a program I do called Raising the Bar on Tourism, Envisioning a Connecticut Valley I-91 Cultural Corridor. And if you look at what we've got here, from New Haven and Yale to Deerfield, 99 miles, fourth largest concentration of early Americana in the country, number one in terms of the setting and the context, just incredible stuff. And we really could be, we got an airport, by the way, right in the middle of it. We could be banging this out of the ballpark, but it would take a kind of political leadership, I hate to say it, that we just have yet to have. Springfield Armory, go if you've never been. I mean, it's really quite interesting. The Coltsville National Park will be co-administered by them. I've been around this stuff a long time. I could not believe this. I went to a conference, and they had a little workshop, and I've been to the Armory, what you see, the public sees. And they said, well, we're going to take you up to storage, a group of us. We'll go up to storage, and it is, I mean, I'm not that into this stuff, but it was just, your jaw just hit the floor. This is the United States Army's archival collection. It doesn't actually belong to the national park. It belongs, I mean, they don't advertise this, but Springfield is where the United States Army stores its historical collection. Why it's got such a thing, who knows, but they're not about to sell it. And it is tens of thousands of cataloged, amazing military history items, all in storage up in Springfield. Then just here in Hartford, I mean, look at the stuff, you know, Mark Twain, Harry Beecher Stowe, the Connecticut Historical Society, Wadsworth Atheneum, Museum of Connecticut History. It goes on and on and on. Years ago, I got a phone call. I talked to the folks at Yankee Magazine, and we got talking about Hartford, Greater Hartford. And I said, you know, look, the fact is, 4 days would not be enough. If you came and spent 4 days here, it would not be enough time to see and do everything of national significance that we have to show and tell here. And they said, oh, come on, you've got to be exaggerating. I said, I'm not exaggerating. Take everything you know about the city. Wadsworth Atheneum, Mark Twain. Take everything you know off the list, and it's still 4 days. And they said, well, all right, how about you write an article about that? So I actually wrote an article about what I call the supporting cast. Not the, you know, Mark Twain, Wadsworth Atheneum, those are the big stars, people know about those. The stuff on the B list would be the A list anywhere else. I mean, you know, I just go nuts over this. So that's it. We've got this amazing thing. This is a great, great epic American story. And, you know, my passion and desire is that we put it to work, and we make it work, and we make this place, you know, the center of attention that it deserves to be. Let me again apologize. It is appalling to me, this technology. My wife and I were talking on the phone. Somebody could make a ton of money if they would invent a single unit. Because in the old days, remember the slide projectors? Simple, right? A single unit where you just plug in a thumb stick, and it's universal and it works consistently. Because this laptops talking to projectors doesn't work. Sometimes it does, but it's not consistently predictable. So I apologize for the lack of projection, and I hope I compensated a little bit by my entertainment, whatever. Thank you so much. And on the way out, if anybody likes Facebook, the very best thing on the internet, he said immodestly, about Connecticut, is the Creating Sense of Place for Connecticut baseball site and the Historic Hartford. There's a little flyer out on the front table. Great fun. Any questions or comments? I know we probably went long. Yeah?
How did Sam die? What happened to him?
Rheumatism, you know, it's funny. At one point,
How old was he?
47, I corresponded with the doctor and convey sort of a medical historian and said these were the symptoms people reported, but there was a little bit of mystery about it exactly. I mean, how he died, but so and, you know, I don't think. I mean, it's look, it's just amazing to me. Three of my four grandparents never saw their 55th birthday. I don't think that was all that uncommon 50 years ago. I think that the marvel of modern medicine is unprecedented in the world. Just people didn't generally live into their 80s, but 40s were, you know, seems incredible. But she did. She didn't actually. She didn't make 80 either. She made it to 79. Any other? Yeah.
Is the Dauntless being restored in Newport?
No, the Dauntless is gone. That was burned after her death. What was left of it was down at the Dauntless shipyard in Essex. And she used to use it. It's a little morbid. After her son died, she used it as a houseboat. And she would go down, she cut down all the sails. So it was moored in Essex, and it never was going to sail again after he died. But she'd go down there and hang out, I guess. But after she died, I think she left orders that it be burned, that it would never. So, yeah.
We give Henry Ford a lot of credit for automating the production of the car, but I think one of Colt's big thing was the automating the manufacturing of that revolver.
Yeah, yes. And Henry Ford himself, if he really wrote it, apparently the famous 11th Encyclopedia Britannica essay on mass production was written or co-authored by Henry Ford himself. And he taught many people credited him, saying that what I did, this is Henry Ford speaking, you know, was leveraging the successes of the gun industry. And it's, you know, it's interesting. You go back to 1900, and I mean, I've collected some of this stuff. You'll find people making things that aren't like guns, that aren't guns, but saying, so good it's made like a gun. People understood that gun making was the perfection of, if something was, that guns, the production of guns was refined to a point of sophistication that nobody had ever seen. So, you know, that really was, and that did, you know, they did this in Springfield Armory, certainly Winchester and Sharps also had, but I think Colt got the most credit, did it, more of it at a larger scale earlier. So, yeah, mechanization, mass production, big part of their story.
Is there any part of the home on Weathersfield Avenue that's open to the public?
Great question, yes. And I've taken tours there. It is sort of appointment only, and if the Wood Library ever wanted to do like a little thing, where they go to Armsmere and maybe the church, we could put something together, and they've been a little weird about it, because they used to be really open, and I think they're a little anxious about this national park, because they don't want pressure to be open all the time. But that really hasn't happened. But nonetheless, I think it could be done. And I've certainly done it before. I think, you know, the reality is almost nobody lives on the first floor, and the first floor is where they take people. And it's interesting. And so, you know, if I had a magic wand, they would say, look, we'll go into the library, we go into the old reception room, we go into the front hall, and then tour groups would look around outside. That's it. That's what they'd get. You'd get a little taste of it. But it's really interesting. I've been in a lot of different rooms, and really it's great. So.
Is the house part of the national park?
Yeah.
What makes up?
Great question. The national park, the old model of the national park was that it's a national park and we own things. But the new model is that it's partnership agreements. So, like the national park, the church is part of the national park, but the national park, the feds do not own the church. So it's a partnership agreement. And I think Armsmere has not agreed to be part of it yet, and maybe they never will. But you know, if I had a magic wand, I'd let the women that vote, that live there take a vote. Because I think most of them, the opportunity to be docents and to showcase this place, a lot of them would probably like it, some would hate it. But a lot of them, I think, would think, gee, this is kind of fun. We got tourists coming, we can show off this cool place. So,
Is the church still being used?
yeah, oh yeah, it's church any Sunday. They always encourage people to come, and it's, you know, I mean, it's a little tough, it's sort of another little hobby horse, but the mainline Protestant churches, as everybody knows, particularly here in New England, many of them have half the parishioners that they had when I was a kid in the 60s. And, you know, if you cut it in half again, we're going to have a crisis. And it's something that worries me because, for a whole bunch of reasons, not the least being that these are some of the crown jewels architecturally. We don't want to lose that, and we have. But Hartford has 4 Episcopal churches. And I shouldn't say this, but there hasn't been a week in 20 years when you would have filled one of them.